Live from Citizen TV, this is Tonight with Sam Gituku.
Good evening. Thank you for choosing Citizen TV on this 9th day of October 2025. And tonight on Data Point, we're reflecting on the recently unveiled Nyota project, which is one that runs for a whole 5 years. But that amount that is in question is about 29 billion shillings. Of course, a project that is funded by the World Bank. We'll be talking about that, knowing too well that this is a project that the conversations, the commitments were made in June 2023 and should run until December 2028. So that's the 5-year program. But at the same time, we'll be telling you the details about how to access the 50,000, which is the Nyota capital that will be coming to select youth, especially from the wards, 70 of them, and also some of the other considerations before that can be given. But that is on Data Point later on. Also tonight, the News Gang is back with a review of some of these questions and, of course, what has been happening in the politics of the country over the past 1 week or so. That's later on the News Gang. But first, here are the top stories tonight. To State House and out of the race, supporters protest in Baringo as KANU chairman Gideon Moi steps down in favor of UDA candidate hours after meeting with President Ruto. One person killed, 7 others arrested as 2 ethnic communities clash in Isinya, Kajiado. Paka Bob na Oyo afanya nini? Release them now. Activists stormed the Ugandan embassy in Nairobi demanding the release and return of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo.
Even when there are express orders, we have to be told that no, someone has to consult above. When the orders, court orders, are quite express.
Was Odhiambo killed and secretly buried? Family of missing Nakuru fisherman Brian Odhiambo protests delays in execution over search warrant at Lake Nakuru National Park. Our sign language interpreter is Liz Otieno. Tonight, we begin with political intrigues in Baringo County, where KANU chairperson Gideon Moi's supporters staged protest in the county following his failure to present nomination papers to the IEBC for the November 27th senatorial by-election. Moi's decision to stand down came just hours after a closed-door meeting with President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi, a move that has fueled speculation of a possible reconciliation between the two after years of political friction. Emmanuel Toh reports.
Hundreds of distraught supporters of KANU senatorial candidate Gideon Moi rode their borders back home after he failed to touch down at the Kabarnet airstrip in Baringo County. The crowd had earlier gathered in anticipation, ready to escort Moi to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission offices in Baringo, where he was expected to present his nomination papers for the November 27th by-election. Angry residents accused the state of orchestrating a plot to lock their candidate out of the race, describing it as a deliberate move to deny them their choice at the ballot.
Na kama kuna kitu imefanya Gideon asikuje, tunataka tujue. Kwa sababu tutakaa hapa mpaka kesho.
Mheshimiwa William Ruto ambaye tumekubali ni 2 term. Akishamaliza yake 2032, tutakuwa na Mheshimiwa Gideon Moi atatushikilia baada ya William Ruto.
The irate crowd later blocked roads leading to the IEBC offices in a bid to stop UDA candidate Vincent Chemitei from presenting his nomination papers. Under tight security, Chemitei was airlifted by chopper for the 2-kilometer journey to the IEBC offices. The aircraft reportedly pelted with stones amid the chaos. Several vehicles were also vandalized in the ensuing melee. Another team which had milled around the IEBC offices at the Kabarnet Rehabilitation Center, forcing their way into the offices, protesting the long wait. All along, Moi is said to have been holed up in a KANU officials meeting at his Kabarak home, which culminated in Moi bowing out of the race.
Najua nyinyi ni watu ya amani, ni mambo tu kidogo imetokea hapa kule, and obvious that is how life it is.
Sisi hatuna uhusiano wowote na KANU. Sisi tuko kama UDA hapa.
The decision came just hours after Gideon Moi held a meeting with President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi, where the deal was reached. Sources indicate that political horse trading and business interests were central to the agreement as alignments for the 2027 elections begin to take shape. Campaigns for the upcoming by-election now kick off in earnest, with the IBC already concluding the clearance of the candidates. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV.
Now, Kenyan and Ugandan activists marched to Ugandan High Commission to petition Ugandan authorities to release Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo. The human rights defenders are now appealing to the East African Community, African Union and international human rights bodies to intervene following rampant cases of abductions in the East African countries of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, as Gatete Njoroge now reports.
Armed with Ugandan and Kenyan national flags, posters with Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo pictures, this group of activists camped outside Uganda High Commission in Riverside. 9 days after their fellow comrades were abducted at a petrol station, the message to President Yoweri Museveni's regime was clear.
We demand, 1, the immediate and unconditional release of comrades Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo.
Stop abducting Kenyans, stop abducting Africans. Sure. Stop persecuting Africans who stand with progressive struggles like that of Bobi Wine and the people of Uganda.
We expect that the rightful person who has the locus standi in the matter, the president of Uganda, the chief commander, is the one who should say the whereabouts of Nicholas and Bob.
The group, concerned with the increased number of abductions and enforced disappearances, now want the intervention of bodies like African Union to ensure safety of government critics.
We demand urgent attention from the East African Community, African Union, the international human rights bodies to investigate and address this abuse of power. We remind President Yoweri Museveni and his regime, the era of fear is over.
Sure. On an Independence Day like today, why can't you at least show mercy, show at least good codes of governance and release these two people? The Ugandans are crying, the mother is crying, everyone is concerned.
They have also called for the release of Ambassador Humphrey Polepole, who was abducted at his home in Dar es Salaam. Polepole has been a harsh critic of President Samia Suluhu's regime. His abduction adds to the growing list of disturbing occurrences, leaving families in anguish.
This one we are going to submit.
The activists who were not received at the High Commission, as the offices were closed for Uganda's Independence Day celebrations, left their petition at the gate with a promise to return and put pressure on the envoy to act. Having submitted their petition to Uganda High Commission offices, which remained closed as they marked their Independence Day, activists have questioned the link between independence and freedom in the wake of abductions in East Africa region. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, a 71-year-old man has been confirmed dead in Isinya, Kajiado County, following day-long chaos pitting two communities. Business and transport activities were disrupted in the cosmopolitan town as warring groups battled, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Kamo Mwangi reports on the chaos that have left 7 people arrested, with police seeking politicians suspected to have fueled the chaos.
These were the scenes witnessed in Isinya, Kajiado County for the better part of Thursday as two communities engaged in battle following months of business disputes. The touching of these two motorbikes belonging to riders of one group on Wednesday night sparked off violence witnessed as the second group sought revenge. A 71-year-old man died after reportedly inhaling tear gas that police logged to try and contain the situation.
Hii bodaboda wamekuwa na business rivalry. D hawataki kwenda kwa stage ya C.
wakataka kumiliki hiyo stages zote. Hii makundi mawili wamefugusana leo asubuhi, wakaleta hali ya taharuki kidogo.
The day-long chaos saw business and transport activities disrupted in the town. Police have confirmed the arrest of 7 individuals suspected of leading the day's chaos, as the search for politicians also suspected of fueling and funding the day's activities commenced.
Na kama watapatikana na hatia yote watapelekwa kotini. Tunawasihi vijana wakati kama huu waendelee na biashara yao ya bodaboda kwa njia ya amani.
Pande zote mbili to reason, wakuje pamoja, waache hii mambo ya, kwa sababu hii vita sisi wote tunaishi hapa hii town. Hii town ni yetu sisi wote. Na tumeishi miaka nenda rudi bila furugu.
Locals accuse security agencies of laxity.
Tulikuwa tumesikizana ya kwamba kuna uhalifu ambaye inaendelea huko mashinani, ya yale makabila ambayo wamekuja kukaa na sisi. Sisi tuliwachukua kama mandugu zetu, lakini tumeona wametugeukiwa.
Bwana DCC lazima akae ndani ya wananchi. Yeye anakaa kwa ofisi, hawezi sikia maneno wa vile wananchi wanasema. Hii mkutano vile unasikia watu walikuwa wamesozana ya mapikipiki, nini maneno ya security, hajawahi zungumzia hata moja.
A contingent of GSU officers has been deployed to reinforce security as tension remains palpable with nightfall. Kamau Mwangi, Citizen TV.
Now, talks between striking public university lecturers, staff, the Ministry of Education and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission failed to yield results at the Machakos University. Lecturers demanded the full 7.9 billion shillings as stipulated in the 2017 to 2021 collective bargaining agreement, rejecting lesser offers. Sources told Citizen TV that striking lecturers accused the SRC of misadvising the government and demanded its exclusion from the talks. And as the strike enters its 21st day, failure to reach a consensus at Friday's meeting will extend the strike into its 4th week. At the same time, the construction of a multi-billion shilling commercial complex on government land in Naivasha has ignited a storm, with residents and leaders condemning what they term as irregular acquisition of the land. The locals are questioning the rationale in allocating the land only 3 years after demolition of dozens of businesses on the same land on claims that they were on public land. Citizen TV's Ben Kirui reports.
Furious residents and leaders stand up at the site of construction to demand answers and express their outrage over the ongoing round-the-clock construction on government land in Naivasha.
Hii mjengo inaendelea hapa, hakuna mtu wa Naivasha hata mmoja kama vile mheshimiwa amesema anajua ni nini na ni nani.
Led by Area Member of Parliament Jane Kehara and other local leaders, the residents want the government to make public who the powerful individual said to be behind the project and allegedly enjoying state protection. The one-sided stretch of land along Moi Road has in recent weeks undergone a rapid transformation, with the construction of a multi-billion shilling commercial complex, petrol stations, hotels and entertainment joints in full swing under tight security.
Wale vijana wako hapa wanafanya kazi, hatujui wanatoka wapi. Hata sijui kama wanasigatia vile maneno ya mjengo inasema.
The president must tell Kenyans who is developing the Kenya Railways land in Naivasha town.
Ironically, the same land was cleared in 2022 when government bulldozers flattened more than 300 businesses, including a luxury hotel.
It has not been forgotten to us that the people of Naivasha that were evicted and their properties worth billions of shillings destroyed by Kenya Railways as they claimed they wanted to develop the land.
Palikuwa na mkahawa hapa ulikuwa umejengwa hapo awali, na ikakuja ikabomolewa, ilikuwa imegharimu pesa mingi sana. Tukaambiwa ya kwamba hapa ni public land na mkahawa huo ukabomolewa.
Residents say the secrecy surrounding the project has raised serious questions about transparency and accountability.
Tunataka kumombolaiziana tuingie hapa ndani tujue nini inaendelea hapo. Ama namna gani? Sisi wenyewe tuingie hapa ndani tuulize nini inaendelea hapo. Kwa sababu nguvu yote iko na sisi. Iko ndani. Na tujue nani amepewa hiyo kazi na nini inaendelea. Kama ni project ya serikali, kwa nini hakuna kibao hapa ya kuonesha?
Local leaders further claim the land was donated by the Delamere family in the 1980s for the construction of a sports facility. They are now questioning the legality of converting land meant for public use into private commercial and residential developments. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The family of Brian Odhiambo, a fisherman from Nakuru who disappeared while in the custody of Kenya Wildlife Service officers in January, is accusing park officials of deliberately delaying the execution of a court order to search for his body within Lake Nakuru National Park. And as Marian Nyambura now reports, detectives from the DCI have moved to court after receiving a crucial lead suggesting that Odhiambo may have been buried within the precincts of the park.
The disappearance case of fisherman Brian Odhiambo has taken a new twist 9 months after he mysteriously vanished. His family is now accusing the Kenya Wildlife Service of deliberately stalling the execution of a court order to search for his body within the park. This follows intelligence reports submitted to DCI detectives suggesting that the missing fisherman may have been secretly buried inside the park.
There are elements in this process that are keen to subvert justice. They are keen to frustrate the entire process. A particular concern is the fact that even when there are express orders, we have to be told that no, someone has to consult above when the court orders are quite express.
Detectives from the Criminal Investigations Office sought the following orders: to conduct a search for suspected grave sites and, if any, immediately initiate an exhumation process, which will be conducted by the chief government pathologist, assisted by homicide detectives. That the exhumed body be examined and extraction of specimen for DNA and toxicology samples be done at the gravesite or any other place, as will be advised by the chief government pathologist, and subsequently the body be interred after the exercise. Nakuru Senior Principal Magistrate Cynthia Muhoro granted the request on Monday this week. Detectives from the Homicide Department visited the park on Wednesday and marked out the scene, identifying an area near the main entry point to Lake Nakuru, believed to contain the graves.
The wheels of justice, however slow they may move, they'd finally get us to a destination. In essence, the DCI have about 90 days from the date of the order to do their investigations and to report to court on the progress and the possible closure of that trial.
6 KWS officers, Francis Washira, Abdul Rahman Ali Sudi, Isaac Ochieng, Evans Kimayo, Michael Wabukala and Alex Lorogoi, denied charges of abduction with intent to confine when they appeared in court in May this year. So far, 13 witnesses have testified in the case, with the lead investigative officer expected to take the stand when the hearing resumes on November 10th.
A few fish like this are held with more regard, are more valuable to our security agencies than human beings. Brian Odhiambo lost his life because of a few fish like this.
The national park occupies an area of 188 square kilometers. The findings of the investigators will dictate the direction of the case.
It's been 9 months since fisherman Brian Odhiambo was first reported missing. 9 months marked by unanswered questions, relentless searches, and a family's desperate hope for answers. As investigators pursue new leads, the possibility of long-awaited answers draws closer. Marian Nyambura, Citizen TV, in Nakuru.
The 24th Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa COMESA Heads of State Summit has resolved to eliminate visa restrictions among member countries to boost trade, investment, tourism and regional economic integration. President William Ruto, who assumed the chair as the chairperson of the regional trade bloc, has also announced plans to operationalize a single-layer transport market to ease the movement of goods, services and people across member states. Seth Olale was there.
As the curtains came down on the 24th COMESA Heads of State Summit, President William Ruto hosted 3 presidents and 3 prime ministers at the Kenyatta International Convention Center in Nairobi. The regional bloc of Eastern and Southern African states concluded its 2-day trade convention with a resolution to remove visa restrictions among member countries in a bid to boost trade, investment, tourism, and regional economic integration.
Urged COMESA member states to further facilitate free movement of persons to enhance cross-border trade and investment.
See how to eliminate both tariff and non-tariff barriers that have made our borders barriers instead of bridges.
The COMESA member states also resolved to boost intracontinental trade by operationalizing a single air transport market to ease the movement of goods, services, and people.
See how to eliminate visa restrictions that impede movement of people, delay movement of ideas, and undermine movement of talent.
Our people, particularly the youth, who embody the future of our regions, are expectant and deserve a COMESA that offers them opportunities for innovation.
They further agreed to establish guidelines for renewable energy, enhance the use of modern technology in agricultural production, promote private sector growth, create youth employment opportunities, and strengthen safeguards against pandemics and disease outbreaks. The deliberations made during the 24th COMESA Head of State Summit at the Kenyatta International Convention Center will be drafted by the Council of Ministers by December 2025, ahead of the Harare 2026 Head of State Summit. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Nairobi County.
The Ministry of Agriculture has directed Tea Board of Kenya to abandon the traditional method of mouth-testing tea for export, grading, and instead adopt scientific testing methods. This directive comes in response to growing dissent among farmers, particularly from the Rift Valley region, who claim that their tea is being unfairly graded. According to them, the current system favors farmers from other regions, leading to lower bonuses for their produce. Melita Oletenges has more.
The aroma and taste of Kenyan tea may be sweet, but the mood among farmers is increasingly bitter. A dispute over tea quality in the Rift Valley region has boiled down to how the tea is graded and specifically how it is tasted. Mounting concerns from farmers over alleged bias in the traditional mouth-tasting method have now prompted government intervention. Principal Secretary Dr. Paul Rono has directed the Tea Board of Kenya to abandon manual tasting and instead adopt scientific lab analysis. The move is aimed at restoring trust among farmers and ensuring fairness.
Within the next 3 months, the center should be ready so that we test our tea in a scientific way, so that the perception of the problem of tea from the west of Rift and east of Rift, some meeting high quality, some meeting low quality, should be a thing of the past.
The order follows sharp criticism from members of parliament in the Western Rift who accuse the Kenya Tea Development Agency of bias and malpractice.
A person who takes whiskey at night may be testing samples from factory A, and he may not be getting it right because of the taste of the whiskey that he took last night.
But the Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA, is pushing back against the accusations. Chairperson Chege Kirundi has denied any wrongdoing, saying the issue is not corruption or favoritism, but the impact of global market forces beyond their control.
Incomes for this year, the bonus, I want to remind the farmers that they should also remember that they have received monthly payments of 25 shillings in the east, and in some areas in the west, 23 shillings and 24 shillings.
What we're seeing is a culmination of many years
of stoppage of DSO, that is direct sales overseas. That was legislated in Parliament. What you're seeing is a culmination of 1 month.
The ministry has also ordered the removal of faulty weighing scales at the Mombasa tea auction and in factories, a step meant to ensure transparency in how tea from every region is measured and priced. Meanwhile, the anger continues to boil over. Farmers from Litein and Chelal factories in Kericho County have taken to the streets, protesting what they call unfairly low bonuses from KTDA, demanding that direct sales be introduced for farmers to benefit more. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
Back to by-election politics, UDA candidate David Ndakwa was today cleared by the IEBC to contest in the November 27th Malava parliamentary by-election. The United Democratic Alliance leaders who accompanied him to the IEBC offices later held a series of rallies in the constituency, urging residents to turn out in large numbers and support their candidate. Stephen Leto reports.
The UDA team stormed Malava constituency IEBC offices to accompany their candidate David Ndakwa to seek clearance from the electoral body. And after he was handed over the certificate to formally contest in the race to replace the late MP Malulu Injendi, UDA leaders exuded confidence of a win.
Na ndio tumekuja, tunaomba watu wa Malava kwa heshima, kuanzia sasa hivi tutatembea kwa vijiji kuomba kwa heshima kwamba kwa heshima ya Malulu Injendi turudi candidate wetu ambaye yuko kwa serikali tupate kiti hiki.
The leaders later addressed a charged crowd in Malava town where they drummed up support for their candidate and promised the electorate of development.
Na tunaomba kitu kimoja, mkae ndani ya serikali ya William Ruto. Imeleta mabarabara kwa wale maeneo ambayo hakuja kuwa na mabarabara. Imeleta utawala na majumba kwa maeneo ambayo yametengwa. Harambee! Na kwaende bunge ama ziende. Alete lami ama azilete. Alete stima.
Mimi niombe Ndakwa, ukitaka uende mbali, tafuta wale vijana wote ambao walikuwa wa Ryan, uweke kwa timu yako.
UDA leaders called for peaceful campaigns ahead of the November 27th polls.
Mimi nimekuja kuomba watu wa Malava, tutembee na ndugu yangu Ndakwa, tumtetee na tumpiganie.
DCP party also presented its candidate Edgar Busieka, who was accompanied by DCP deputy party leader Cleophas Malala. Others cleared include Wilberforce Tuvei of Kenya Moja Movement Party, who was second to be cleared, and James Trinati Angatia of Alliance for Real Change Party. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
And with that story of the by-elections, you're taking a short break here, but the news gang will be back shortly with the early start as well as this. Coming up on Data Point, we break down the numbers behind the Nyota program, who stands to benefit, and just how much will they take home. Welcome back, and it's time for Data Point before we get to the conversation with the News Gang team, which is already here. Let's begin by looking at the Nyota project, which was launched by the government at some time this week. Nyota stands for National Youth Opportunities Towards Advancement, and it's a 5-year initiative. Of course, the commitments were arrived at in June 2023. It is an initiative between the government of Kenya and the World Bank. Of course, the World Bank doing the financing. It is targeting up to 820,000 youth. And of course, the other thing to look at is the ages that qualify. You have to be between 18 and 29, but the persons with disabilities are allowed to go up to 35 years of age. When it comes to matters of education, the maximum level of education should be Form 4, meaning any person, any young person who is who has studied up to Form 4 and below, you qualify for this. And the status for this, for you to qualify, you have to be either unemployed, underemployed, or employed while earning a low income, or rather you engage in a low income job. The other thing to look at is the targets of Nyota. According to the website of Nyota, they are saying that for training, they are targeting up to 90,000 youth. For certification for recognition of prior learning, they are talking about 20,000 youth. Of business training, 110,000 youth. And then for those that will be involved in savings through the NSSF Haba na Haba initiative will be 190,000. And there's a huge number of 600,000 youth that are targeted for digital skilling for them to be in a position to access the government procurement opportunities. Upon training, we don't know how that will be processed to ensure that they get those tenders or procurement opportunities. Now, at the same time, the process of Nyota projects, first you have to submit an application. The application will be reviewed for eligibility, of course, looking at the ages, the level of education, whether you are underemployed, unemployed, or involved in a low-income job. And then after that, the selection will be randomized. That's what the Nyota team is saying. The other thing is that there will be an entrepreneurship aptitude test conducted on those persons that are shortlisted for that. Thereafter, there will be an assessment of the mindset. Do you have an entrepreneurship mindset? Are you ready for business? And then after that, they will be assessed for intervention needed, so that you'll be told, do you require training? Do you require some money for you to start a business? So before any money has been awarded to any beneficiary, there has to be a 4-day business service training, and it has to be assessed to make sure that it has met all the qualifications or the requirements. And thereafter, you can be given a startup capital of 50,000 shillings to the startup business or expand your own business. And this money will come in 2 tranches of 25,000 each. The other thing that will be considered is that the persons that are targeted for that startup capital are 70 in every ward. In the country, we have 1,450 wards, so that gives you a total of 101,500 youth. The capital available for this is up to 50,000 shillings per person, so that gives you a total of 5 billion shillings. And this is what the PSAs have been talking about across the 47 counties. But now, there's something you need to know, because this entire program is bigger than 5 billion shillings. It is up to 29 billion shillings, which I want us now to break down. So this funding is coming from the International Development Association, which is an arm within the World Bank Group. There is a loan, shorter maturity loan, that is amounting to $100 million US. That converts to 13 billion shillings if you have to use the rate of 130 shillings to the dollar. Then there is IDA credit. So those two are different, because a shorter maturity loan may be a couple of years. The IDA credit, it refers to the interest that will be charged on this loan. It is up to 100 million shillings, converting to 13 billion shillings. So that's a total of 26 billion shillings, which is a loan from the World Bank to the Kenyan government. The other one is IDA grant. This is money that will be given to the young people. It's up to $20 million, converting to 2.6 billion shillings. This one you don't have to refund. For Global Financing Facility, it is up to $9 million, which converts to 1.17 billion shillings. And of course, in total, you get to the 29.7 billion shillings, which will be used to roll out this program. But now, Kenya is not the only country that is benefiting from the World Bank Group. And this is important to distinguish between whether it's a Kenyan initiative or it is also from the World Bank. Now, there are countries like Namibia, which has a $28 million US initiative, which was unveiled in September of 2025. Rwanda has a $200 million US initiative, which was unveiled in September 2024, which is last year. Ethiopia, 200 million shillings since September 2023, but of course, the release of this money has been at different stages. Burundi is talking about $80 million US since 2021. So that gives an indication that indeed, even as the government continues to talk about this being a Kenyan initiative, obviously it's important to know that the World Bank is really heavy into this one. And perhaps, Jamila, we start there on what you've witnessed in the announcement of the initiative, but also what really stands out for you as you once again talk about youth empowerment.
Gituko, I think what was interesting for me was the launch was conducted in 47 different counties, where PSs went to all those counties, ostensibly to speak to chiefs and educate them about what the project is all about. But Gituko, what stands out for me are a couple of things. One, yes, the issue of youth unemployment is a big one in Kenya. I was looking at some data. It says about around 67% of total unemployed persons are between the ages of 18 and 34. That's according to the Kenya National Bureau of Standards. But how many other youth programs have been launched? Not just under this administration, even previous ones. I looked through and there was Kazi kwa Vijana. Remember that one? There's the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. There's the Ajira Digital. There's the Kenya Youth Employment Opportunities Project. There's a Hustler Fund. That was a big deal with this administration. But then do they really, really, in any way, shape or form, sort out what the issues were? Why were they created in the first place? Of course, to try and deal with this issue of youth unemployment. But the challenge usually that I see is continuity, because each new regime comes in, they discard the existing programs instead of improving or integrating them. So the question I ask is Nyota really a new one? Or is it a rebranding of an old one because of the new political dispensation or the current political dispensation that we have? Because something else that I think about, you said it's a World Bank project, it's probably a 5-year project if I'm not mistaken. So what is the sustainability beyond the 5-year project? What happens to it after 5 years? Because a lot of these projects are either tied to maybe a donor cycle or the political terms. So are you going to start something which one will last long, 2 will be sustainable, 3 that can actually continue, have its own miguu yake yenyewe kuendelea despite what the political environment or which government is of the day. So I think those are some of the things that stand out for me, because it's not the first one, but I think if it's well managed, it should be one that can maybe last longer.
Linus, what are your thoughts with this initiative?
I think it's a good initiative. It's timely, if not behind schedule, in fact. Because we have to see these things in context. This country dodged a bullet in June last year. It was the biggest warning of what can happen if the youth problem is not addressed. And I think we have some of the highest rates of unemployment, especially in the region. And for an economy of our size, it's not something that we should sit on our laurels about. It's something that government must find a way of fixing. We have upwards of 1 million youth entering the job market every year. Graduates that are coming into an environment that doesn't have jobs. And this means that as long as they are not absorbed, we have a very, very sizable number, sizable population, size of the population that is very unhappy with not just with the government, but with society in general. So Nyota, let's hope Nyota succeeds. We've seen the numbers there in terms of where the money is also coming from. It's supported by the World Bank. Going forward, we expect to see how long will the program run? Is it a perpetual program, at least in terms of the remaining 2 years before the election?
Right. Yvonne, obviously, when you hear the mention of the World Bank, you would expect a bit of structure. Perhaps I don't know what this then teaches us with all these many initiatives that we've had, including what Jamila was talking about.
Yeah, this is not the first, at least that's been done in partnership with the World Bank. Like you mentioned in your data point, there's the Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project that was launched in 2016 in partnership with the World Bank, aiming to increase employment and earning opportunities for the youth. I think what we have to say is laudable is the fact that there is a recognition that the young people in this country need some form of empowerment. One of the things that we need to do with initiatives like these, as it launches and goes forward, is to divorce it completely from politics.
Right.
And we know, the phase we are in at the moment, we're almost in campaign mode. You would think we're either Uganda or Tanzania. So for me, that would be the key thing, to ensure that this is not politically driven and is not laced with political narratives and intentions. That being said, I think at some point in this country, we might have to start taking stock of all of these youth-led, or rather youth-designed empowerment initiatives, and to see where we are. Because we still seem to have a problem with young people in this country, getting them empowered, getting them employed, getting them the right skills that they need, and not just the right skills, but the ability to earn a decent living. So that, like Linus, you were saying, to prevent the events of 2024 and 2025. We've had the Youth Enterprise Development Fund in 2006, the Women Enterprise Fund, which also targeted young women entrepreneurs. The Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project with the World Bank. We've recently had the Hustler Fund, which, though not specifically geared towards the youth, but young people were said to benefit as well. And that is billions of shillings. The Youth Enterprise Fund had an initial 1 billion shillings. It grew to about 6.5. For the Women Enterprise Fund, a cumulative total of 26.4 billion. For the KYEOP with the World Bank, it was 15 billion shillings at the time. That was the initial amount that was put in by the World Bank. And of course, we know the 50 billion shillings that was started off for the Hustler Fund. All of these funds, by the way, all have similar ideas, right? Training of the youth, entrepreneurship, empowerment, and training them in terms of even digital skills. So is it possible for us to sit down and take a look at all of these funds? And I guess we'll come back and talk about the challenges as well that we've seen with them in a moment. But where are the youth today with all of these funds, all of these initiatives, all of these programs? And why do we still have a problem? Is it their design? Is it their structure? Is it, like you were saying, perhaps better continuity with them from one administration to the next? It's good to pour billions of shillings into youth, but I think for me it needs to go beyond throwing money at the problem and to start to see, you know, more tangible benefits. That's not to say there haven't been benefits, there have been some, but this is still a problem. Even with all of these billions of shillings that we put into training, into capacity building, into saving culture, I would imagine we would have seen the youth in this country would be further than they are. And so the hope with this one is that, you know, maybe the design and structure will be more beneficial.
Yeah, just to mention, we had the PS for MSMEs, Susan Mangenyi, earlier in the week. And one thing she explained was that what the PSs were doing was a sensitization exercise, just to raise some awareness ahead of the formal launch. I think the formal launch is set for the 29th of this month, and that will be presided over by President Ruto. So it looks like further into the month we'll get more details of how this is supposed to play out.
Yeah, and sorry, I just think the one thing that we need to also remember and what you've pointed out is, you know, this is taxpayers' money. Some of the money that's coming from IDA is a grant, but, you know, the rest are loans that we eventually
have to repay.
So there needs to be value for money. There needs to be some real tangible benefits, like a cost-benefit analysis that we say taxpayers are putting in this money or paying it back. How do we ensure that, you know, the youth make the most out of it? And we've moved from this level to this level. We've empowered this number of youth, and this is what's happened. They've now become employers of maybe one person themselves, or two, they've changed the community, they've moved things in their social spaces. So I think for me, that's what I would be looking out for with the Nyota program as we go. And not forgetting even the other World Bank initiative, there were some questions that were raised about it. But again, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about this in detail because, again, at the same time as you look at the training on accessing government procurement opportunities, targeting a whole 600,000 people, the question you must ask is, okay, fine, you can give the skills, but then again, the startup capital is about 50,000 shillings. Outside of that, the other initiative has been Hustler Fund. Look at the amount of money that is available for borrowing. How then do these 600,000 people who are trained on government procurement, how do they convert to becoming suppliers of the same government? Looking also at the reforms that the government is coming up with, whether it's the electronic government procurement system that you're talking about, how do you even have access to capital? And the other question is, so you're targeting, or the government is targeting persons that have the highest level of education is Form 4. What happens to those that have gone beyond that? The certificates, the diplomas, the degrees, including people that graduated in December last year. We're just about 2 months away to another series of graduations. What has happened to those people that graduated last year? How many of them have job opportunities? When you target these people that are Form 4 and below, what's happening to those that have qualifications beyond that? And of course, that's a conversation we'll have later on the Newsgum. But first, you're taking a short break. When you come back, we have business and sports news. Kicked off the process to privatize the Kenya Pipeline Company through an initial public offering (IPO) at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. This marks one of Kenya's most significant state divestitures in recent years. In a public notice published in local dailies, the Privatization Commission, the agency charged with implementing the country's privatization program, has invited bids from qualified firms to provide transaction advisory services for the planned IPO following approval by Parliament early in the month. Jimmy Mbogo reports.
In a notice published on Thursday, the Commission announced it is seeking a team of advisors led by a lead transaction advisor to coordinate and execute the Kenya Pipeline Corporation IPO process. The advisory roles, which have been divided into 8 slots, include lead transaction advisor, stock brokering, accounting, legal, advertising, public relation, receiving bank, and registrar services, with interested firms being given until October 21, 2025 to submit their proposals. The Commission further announced that the advisors will be selected through a quality cost-based selection QCBS method as outlined by the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015. And although the privatization of Kenya Pipeline Company has attracted mixed reaction, the Commission says the move aims to unlock KPC's full commercial potential while allowing ordinary Kenyans to own a share of one of the country's most strategic enterprises. The sale is also expected to raise funds to support the 2025-2026 national budget, while at the same time deepening the capital market and strengthening corporate governance through stock exchange listing and regulatory oversight. The IPO process was officially launched on October 9, 2025, and the Commission expects to conclude the entire transaction by March 31, 2026. Earlier, the High Court had issued conservatory orders restraining the government from proceeding with key steps of the KPC privatization, barring the state from offering, disposing, transferring or otherwise dealing with any share of KPC until the matter was fully heard. The injunction was as a result of a petition filed by the Consumer Federation of Kenya, COFEC, which argued that the process breached the law by failing to ensure transparency, public participation, and proper parliamentary oversight as required under the Privatization Act and the Constitution. The High Court later lifted the orders, blocking debate on the privatization, allowing MPs to consider the proposal. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, Kenya has lost over 20 billion shillings in just 5 years due to delays in approving advanced crop varieties that could boost food security and farmer incomes. A new report warns that misinformation and regulatory bottlenecks are keeping life-changing technologies out of farmers' hands and consequently costing the country billions. Dennis Otieno reports.
A new study titled The Cost of Delay paints a sobering picture of what Kenya is losing by not adopting 3 advanced crop varieties, insect-resistant maize and cotton, and a late blight disease-resistant potato. Over the last 5 years, those delays have cost the country an estimated 20.4 billion shillings.
Just to put this in perspective, that money is able to buy over 300,000 metric tons of maize that can feed more than 1.5 million Kenyans. And that is the magnitude of the loss that we are facing as a result of the delay in adopting this technology.
The report by Breakthrough Institute, Alliance for Science, and the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, among others, shows that if Kenya moved swiftly to commercialize these crops, they could inject more than 60 billion shillings into the economy over the next 3 decades. For instance, the advanced BT maize, developed by Kenyan scientists, resists pests like the stem borer and fall armyworm, which wipe out up to 20% of harvests every year. The report says had it been commercialized earlier, farmers could have produced an extra 194,000 tons of maize, enough to cover a quarter of Kenya's maize imports in 2022. For cotton farmers, the story is similar. The rollout of BT cotton, now finally approved, was delayed by almost 5 years, costing Kenya's textile sector hundreds of millions. And for potato farmers battling the late blight disease, the delay in approving a resistant Shangi variety is costing over 7 billion shillings in lost benefits.
There are a lot of myths around genetically modified food crops, and it is these myths that and the misinformation in our population that has led into all these conversations as to whether or not GM maize is safe, BT cotton is safe, and many other GM food crops.
We have had a lot of court cases. Some of them have been dismissed. Others are still active. And because of those litigations, basically the deployment of GMO technologies have been slowed down. We hope those cases will be determined in a short period of time, after which the authority is able to progress with its mandate to assess and make decisions on the GMOs.
With 8 African countries already growing genetically modified crops, including Ethiopia, Ghana and Nigeria, scientists say Kenya risks being left behind if stagnation in policy continues. Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV.
Business News brought to you by Safaricom Business.
Tukitaka kugrow zaidi, we choose partners with solutions that get us there. You could also power your progress. Join Safaricom Business today. Power your progress at business.safaricom.co.ke.
Now, Austria-based striker Ryan Wesley Ogam scored the decisive goal as Kenya's Harambee Stars edged out Burundi 1-0 in a dead-rubber 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier match staged in Bujumbura this afternoon. Ogam struck in the 72nd minute, just 7 minutes after coming off the bench. The win lifts Kenya to third place in the Group F standings with 12 points, 8 shy of leaders Ivory Coast. Harambee Stars were out of the contention for a place to next year's World Cup finals to be hosted by USA, Mexico and Canada, will now face group leaders Ivory Coast on Tuesday away in Abidjan. The Elephants will be seeking victory to secure their place in next year's World Cup showpiece.
The Kenyans celebrate, but the Kenyans needed to improve after half-time, and they have. It's Uma Olunga to Ryan Rabok, who just curls it, and that is unstoppable for Nahimana. Can't do anything about that one.
Now, Harambee Starlets players say they are ready to give everything to help Kenya qualify for the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations (WAFCON) in the crucial two-leg tie against the Gambia later this month. Kenya is set to host the first leg in Nairobi on Friday, October 24th, before traveling to Senegal 4 days later, where the match will be staged. Head coach Odimba has maintained a blend of experience and emerging talent in her squad as Kenya targets a return to Africa's biggest stage for women's football. The Starlets, who last graced the WAFCON in 2016, are aiming to make a strong comeback, with the goalkeeping department expected to be a key pillar in their qualification journey.
Big achievement juu kuchezea the Harambee Starlets sio rahisi. Kuna wengi wanatamani kuvaa ile flag ya Kenya, but it's not easy. For me, I just thank God. Na most of the time, when I enjoy, sometimes people think maybe ni hard kwetu, but we enjoy doing what we do.
I'm so happy na nimekuja hapa kurepresent nchi yangu na familia yangu, then na mimi mwenyewe. Yeah, so niko too happy na tuko ready kucheza hiyo WAFCON na I think hatutawaangusha wananchi.
Yes, anatamka. The Kenya Prison Service held a colorful ceremony at the prison's staff training college in Ruiru to honor and celebrate its outstanding sportsmen and women for their exemplary performance in various disciplines. The service, known for its rich sporting heritage, has for decades remained a powerhouse in nurturing and developing athletic talent, producing champions who have proudly flown the Kenyan flag at local, regional and international arenas. The event was graced by Principal Secretary, State Department for Sports, Elijah Mwangi, who praised the Kenya Prison Service for its consistent contribution to the country's sporting excellence.
We have those other technical people also have their own training fields, leave alone the players. And therefore, we shall be liaising with the PS and the management of Kenya Prison Service in liaison with our minister, the president, to see to it that we can develop. Of course, he has given directive that we do a stadium for the Kenya Prison Service.
In the just concluded World Championship that was held in Tokyo, Japan, one of our finest, the Kenyan best, in the 800 meters women category, Lilian Odira won gold medal for our country. Makofi kwake. These achievements are not just trophies on a shelf. They are a living testament to the spirit of excellence that defines the Kenya Prison Service.
And the Kenya Triathlon team has upped preparations ahead of the 2025 African Cup of Nations, which features both the Duathlon Cup and the main Triathlon Cup, all set for Sunday. The team has been training in various parts of the country and are in high spirits ahead of the assignment on home soil.
I started swimming since I was, I think, 5 years old. Progressed through the ranks in swimming, and I ran. It's in my blood, thankfully. So I used to do cross country in school, and I started going for Team Tri-Fit events in Diani, 2014, 2015, the kids races, and I realized I was good at it, and I enjoyed the pain, and felt quite accomplished after every race.
For the last 6 months, it's been a combination of double swims, basically a lot of swimming, a lot of running, setting targets for a week, and usually do around 50 kilometers of running a week.
Yeah, I've competed there last year, August, and things didn't go the way I wanted, but I've corrected the mistake that I made last time, and I'm hoping for the best this time.
So that's it with the news update for the